Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the weekly LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube live series. Why are you an entrepreneur? The trials and triumphs. And if you're tuning in for the first time or you're watching the replay, this is all about bringing rockstar entrepreneurs to have a rockstar conversation about their journey into this very, very hard endeavor. They have words of wisdom, they have some resources, tips, best practices, and inspiration. So, for all you small business owners, I never disappoint. I am here tonight with Isaac Belden. He is the founder of the Veteran Entrepreneur Alliance. Welcome, Isaac.
Hey, thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. So, I always start out with, why are you an entrepreneur? What's taken you to this journey?
So I called for a long time. I called myself actually an accidental entrepreneur. Um, there was my journey. So I served in the military for 12 years, and after the military, I kind of found myself just a little lost. Didn't really have much direction, or didn't really feel like I had a lot of meaning in my life. And it wasn't until I got my first taste of entrepreneurship that I really felt like I had that back. I had a purpose again. And I tell the story. I was a couple months out of combat and back home, sitting at a Barnes and Noble, working in the in the music department of a Barnes and Noble, just asking myself, like, what what the hell am I doing? This doesn't mean anything. This doesn't matter. So um, really being an entrepreneur, it just gives me a sense of mission, gives me a sense of purpose, and ultimately led me to what I'm doing every day, which I'm sure we'll get into here in a little while.
So, what was the first company after you left the military that you started, that first entrepreneurial experience?
Well, so it's a funny story because I mean, entrepreneurship comes in many different forms, right? Like some people call
Mhm.
themselves entrepreneurs, some of us are intrapreneurs, right? They're entrepreneurs, but they work within another company. And I guess my first experience was really as an intrapreneur. So I
Okay.
worked for someone else, but I was allowed to take a whole new approach and build a team and build some programs that didn't exist prior to my being there. And so that was really my first foray into entrepreneurship. Was It was for a credit card processing and an alternative funding company, and I got to build this incredible team. And I just kind of outgrew that opportunity and decided that I could do more with my talents if I had full and absolute control of the direction of the company.
Absolutely. Is that what appeals to you most, or am I jumping the gun? What in entrepreneurship appeals to you most?
So I think obviously there's the personal side of it where I'm able to kind of be the master of my own destiny, right? I
Yeah.
feel like I'm doing this thing that can help build a future for myself and my family, but also a huge part of it is the opportunity that it gives you to do more with that opportunity, like being able to give back to the community, be able to be a part of like this bigger ecosystem of small business in your communities.
So, how do you think the military prepared you for entrepreneurship?
Uh, so that's a tough question. Um,
You didn't think this was going to be easy,
yeah.
right?
So drive and determination definitely play a role in it. Being willing to put in the work, but in a lot of ways, uh, it didn't prepare me. And I say that because there's a lot of aspects to running a business that the average veteran isn't really very good at.
Mhm.
Like, you're good at the work, you're good at the ideas, you're good at just like grinding and getting it done, but the bookkeeping and the marketing and all of the other things that are vital. A lot of us veterans, we come from more modest backgrounds, maybe kind of the lower end of like the economic pool. So we don't have a lot of financial literacy skills. So I think that makes it tough for some folks coming out of the military trying to start businesses. And that's actually something that I'm actively working on every day to try to make better for veterans. But yeah, I would say the drive and the determination and the unwillingness to quit, I think, is definitely very valuable to me.
All right. So I have to tell you, those are probably the most important, like tangible skills that you could ever come up with, because you can't really teach somebody that. Where we can teach you bookkeeping, right? You can learn, how to market something. And so I don't think it's really just even veterans that have that issue. I think anybody who wants to jump in to being an entrepreneur and having a small business, there's just too much to learn.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just hard. It's complicated, and it's overwhelming. So I love the fact, though, that you just gave key things that it gave you. It's determination, it's grit, it's that work ethic, that willpower. I think the military prepared you really, really well for this. So what have you found to be the hardest thing? And maybe that's what we've already covered, but the hardest thing in entrepreneurship?
I think kind of reimagining what it means to work as a team, I think is one thing. In the military, right, you've just got people behind you all the time, right? Behind you, beside you, in front of you. Like there's just someone there all the time. And entrepreneurship can be kind of lonely in the early days, right? Until, and it was for me, until I got out there and I just started talking to people, meeting with people, showing up to, networking events, even events where I felt like maybe it wasn't my room, right? Like getting outside of my box and really trying to build a new, like people use the word tribe all the time. I kind of hate it, but find my new community, find my new tribe. And I think that you very quickly realize that there are a lot more people out there that want you to succeed, and maybe even need your help for them to succeed. So just finding a new home in the community.
And I love that, because people who are listening to this right now, you can't go it alone. Like, I really think it takes a village, and that's what you did. You don't want to call it a tribe, but you went and found your village, and it's your support system. So, I don't care how you do it, whether it's on a Facebook group or, some virtual networking, or it doesn't matter. What you said is super important for them to not do it alone. It just can't happen. So I want to talk about what you're doing now with the, Veterans Entrepreneur Alliance, because I think this is going to fit right into an even bigger picture of entrepreneurship. So tell me a little bit about this company you created and how you even came up with the idea.
So it's a nonprofit. It's a 501c3. And I guess I'll start by kind of how I came about it. So like I mentioned before, I found myself kind of lost for a while after my time in the military, and especially my time deployed. And I did a really good job of screwing it up for a while. And again, like I mentioned, it was entrepreneurship that kind of gave me that drive and that purpose again, gave me that sense of belonging. And so as I was running my for-profit businesses, I got this idea that, like, as much as we want to think we're special and unique, some of us, we have special and unique things about us, but just because you think you're special and unique doesn't mean there isn't somebody else going through exactly the same thing you are, right? So it just hit me one day. I've lost a lot of friends to suicide, I've lost a lot of my friends to addiction and things. And I knew that there were veterans out there that could find the same sense of peace and belonging and purpose through entrepreneurship that I had found. And so it originally was born as an idea that I was going to do a one-day event. It's going to be maybe an annual thing if it went off well. And I was just going to bring a lot of really smart people into the room to teach veterans what it takes to start and or grow a business. And the problem was I didn't know how to put on an event. So I just went out and I started talking to people, just like talking and just like speaking from the heart and telling them like, this is what I want to do. And this is why I want to do it. And I won't bore you with all the details, but before too long, I ended up sitting in front of a person at a bank here in downtown Boise called Zion's Bank.
Yes.
And they came on board and they donated the 17th floor event space to us. This specific person helped me find all my speakers, my sponsors, and we put on an event that was just unbelievable. And I'm biased, right? But it was better than most of the events I'd ever been at. And I just couldn't believe that I was a part of it, right? Like it had been born in my brain. And afterwards, there was an attorney, one of the attorneys that spoke. He came to me and he said, hey, had I not known this was a first year thing, I never would have guessed it. Have you thought about starting a nonprofit around the idea? And I said, sure, but I did all of this for free. So it's not like I'm sitting on a pile of money to throw at becoming a nonprofit, right? Well, fortunately for me, A, he was a veteran. B, he worked for a law firm called Perkins Coie, who is a massive law firm. I mean, they incorporated Boeing. They represent like everybody from Facebook to Amazon to just you name it. And he said, well, good thing for you. We're very good at that sort of thing. And we have some resources we'd like to throw at it. So they helped us file our nonprofit and we kind of hit the ground running. Now we're 4 years in, we can't really count COVID.
Wow.
We had a couple of setbacks that I'm sure we'll touch on here in a few, but as of today, we're putting on events, both virtual and in person, training veterans on a variety of things. We obviously focus on business and entrepreneurship, but I use those as tools to sneak in some of the really important stuff too, like self-care and making sure that you're doing things for you both personally and professionally that are going to make sure that you succeed in the long run.
I love this. One, a lot of businesses come from our own personal experience. I mean, that's where a lot of stuff comes from. And, it's like, if I'm going through this, others have got to be going through it too, maybe a little bit differently. But like you said, you weren't unique and you did identify that. So kudos to you on that one. But what I love about this is I find you to be very courageous. That was just fearless by saying, I never thought of a 501, but hey, let's look at it. So, and 4 years now. So how many events do you put on every year? And how many veterans do you think you've impacted in 4 years?
So we've had some setbacks. The first year obviously is just kind of figuring it out, right? Second year, we were putting on a couple of events a month, and then we had our big annual event that it all started with. Typically at our big events, we bring in about 100 veterans. I'd say at our monthly events, we were between 20 and 50 veterans. Obviously, a lot of them the same people, right? Because it takes a while to build up that community. And we were really primed to have a massive 2020. But then, of course, COVID hit, and the veteran community, especially, I had a pretty hard time converting to the virtual side of things, whether it was a skill level or just I don't want to do it because I hate that they're making us go virtual, right?
Right.
So I faced some struggles there. And then right as we were coming out of that, unfortunately, and she's doing okay now, but my daughter was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. So we fought that for 16 months. So that kept VEA down and out a little bit. Well, a lot of it.
Yeah.
So really kind of the beginning of this year is when we really started ramping up again. And we've really been hitting our stride now. We've launched an iOS and Android app that makes everything that we do accessible to veterans, no matter where they are, what their situation is. And we're starting to get back to the in-person veteran events, as well as continuing the virtual stuff, because most everything about COVID was terrible. But what was really great about it is it opened people's minds to commuting and communicating virtually. Mm-hmm. I think it's still great to be face-to-face with people, and I prefer that. But I think having virtual options for people, it just makes things so much simpler. Like,
yeah. And you can reach a broader audience, right? Yeah. Those who don't want to go to an in-person event now have an option.
Yeah. And that's what I was kind of doing with the iOS and Android apps that we launched. I call it the FOB, FOB, which stands for Forward Operating Base in military speak. One of the things that I really realized after coming out of COVID is, even though we had great turnouts at events, there were veterans that weren't in the room that should have been in the room. And those veterans that weren't in the room quite possibly needed to be in the room more than the ones that were. And so coming out of that, I wanted to offer an opportunity, and it operates pretty similar to a social media site. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We put some education stuff in there, but I wanted to offer a platform where these veterans could come and they could start creating kind of forming bonds and friendships, and getting familiar with people that might also want to attend events, but maybe they'd be more likely to do it if they knew a few people, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yes. So I completely agree with you there. It's right alongside kind of my views on the virtual thing is, you either don't have the time, you don't have the desire, because maybe you just don't feel comfortable in an environment like that. Maybe you have some mental health stuff going on where you just got to ease into it, right? So I definitely think it's made the world a more connected and more maneuverable place.
So first off, I'm happy to hear that your daughter is okay, because that is very hard as a parent, and I can totally relate. And so I can understand where that kind of derailed a few things. And I want to know what kept you going and saying, I still have to keep this company, some semblance of it going. What kept you inspired?
In some ways, if I'm being completely honest, selfishness, right? Like, I felt like I needed it, because what I get to do every day, it feeds my soul. It makes me happy. It keeps my tank full, right? But then, of course, the original reasons is knowing that there are so many men and women out there that are struggling with kind of this loss or lack of sense of belonging or purpose or mission, and knowing that I can offer potentially a soft landing spot where they can at least explore whether or not this is going to be the thing that can give that back to them. And if it can't, I have a lot of friends and partners and advisors and mentors that do have places where they could go. Because entrepreneurship, the great thing about what we're trying to do here is, yeah, I'd love you to start a business. It would be a great success story for me, right? But if it's not for you, we want to help you flesh that out early. That way you don't find out 3 to 5 years down the road when you've sunk everything that you have into it, and now you're in a worse place than where you started, and then you have to go get a job or go back to school or whatever it might be.
And I think that's important for everybody. That's the first thing I do when I meet somebody is this really for you? Let's dig in deep. And have you done proof of concept before you
Yep.
jump into this and you spend thousands of dollars and thousands of hours? Is this going to work, and are you going to like it? Because I don't know about you, but it isn't just in the veterans world. We have a lot of displaced people, especially those
Yeah.
over 50. You know, over 50 is a tough one. They can't get back into the labor force, and they're kind of kicking and screaming into entrepreneurship like, I don't have anything else. So I think you're right. You've got to make sure that it is for them and that they're not doing it as a default.
Yeah. Because it sounds like it sounds cool, right? It sounds attractive. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I could be my own boss. I can set my own hours. Just because you own a business doesn't mean you're your own boss. Your customers are your boss. Your members are your boss, right? And if anything, you're going to, at least initially, right, you're going to work a hell of a lot harder than you did at your 9 to 5. And with less thanks, right? so, so it sounds wonderful, but it's just like, I think that people come into it sometimes with rose-colored glasses, with the big dream. And it's great to dream big, but it's also great to dream big and know that the dream isn't always going to be wonderful. Sometimes it's going to be ugly and frustrating and terrible.
So, what is the greatest success that you've had so far
Ooh.
with being an entrepreneur, with having this company? What stands out for you?
So a few things. So I think the greatest thing that has come from me being an entrepreneur, or finding that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, was leading me to what I'm doing now. Yeah, in a way, I guess I'm still an entrepreneur because I'm running the organization. I'm building this thing, but being kind of in the typical business grind and seeing what that gave me, and then being able to see what I could potentially give to other people through that, I think it by far is my biggest gift. But then I guess my greatest success with the VEA is, I mean, there's lots of little ones. I can't say that we've had one. Well, I have one that I'll mention in a minute, but it's every time that I see a veteran with a breakthrough, right? Where it's just like, man, I was looking at this operating agreement and it seemed like absolute gibberish. I didn't know how I was going to get it done. And like, you helped me to the other side of that. Or, man, I really needed some funding for this and you helped me find this grant that I got. Like, okay, now I can go just a little bit further, right? So every time that I see a veteran with some sort of breakthrough, no matter how big or small, it takes them one step further, or lets them just keep going one more day.
You know, the successes don't have to be huge. You don't have to land these huge contracts for you to say, oh, I'm making a difference. I think it's awesome that you're celebrating one veteran at a time, almost like it's your impact is all the time, which I think that's like the biggest success you can have, right?
Yeah. Now, as an organization, we were recently part of a huge event that happens in Boise every year. It's called Boise Entrepreneur Week. This year there were about 6,000 people, I think they were estimating, were going to come through the event. It's a week long, Monday through Friday. Well, technically Tuesday through Friday. Kicks off with a dodgeball tournament, which was pretty awesome. I put together a team of veterans and we competed in a dodgeball tournament.
Did you win?
We did not. We didn't have any alternates. We were running 6 guys. It's first to 5 wins. It's a race to 5 wins each round. So it was exhausting. But we were mean. We're gonna win next year. And at the end of it, I had a fireside chat with a former Navy SEAL that owns a company called Cordova Outdoors. They build Cordova coolers. They manufacture them right here in Idaho, just maybe 20 minutes from me. And this was kind of our dating phase with Boise Entrepreneur Week. to maybe have like a proof of concept that we should get included during the entire week. And everything went off really great. The event went off really great. But the deciding factor, I think, that pushed us over the edge to being added to next year was they have a big pitch competition where a bunch of entrepreneurs come together. There were 14 of them. 3 of the 14 were veteran companies. They hand out 4 awards, and 2 of the award winners were the veteran companies. So 50% of the winners, and the big winner who won $100,000 was a veteran company.
That's
so
awesome.
I was like messaging the guy that runs Boise Entrepreneur Week at like 11 o'clock at night, being like, hey, did you see this? Did you see how awesome this was? 2 veterans out of 14. And so he gave me the go ahead, like, yeah, let's start having conversations. So we're going to have what's called a track, right? So a veteran track at Boise Entrepreneur Week in 2023, which will allow me to put events on all week long that kind of move the needle or move the ball forward for veterans that are looking for that next thing.
Well, I think we met through Zion's Bank because I've done speaking engagements for them.
Maybe
you may have been at one of those, and that's how we connected.
Yeah,
I think so. And my father-in-law is retired from the Marines, and he started his
happy birthday, Marines, today.
Yeah. And so he started his company and just has built a huge business, and also, gives back to making sure he hires his fellow veterans, right?
Yeah.
So that's great. So tell everybody where they can get a hold of you if they would like to connect, whether it's a veteran who needs your help, or maybe somebody who wants to assist you in some of these events. How do they get a hold of you?
So you can always email me, obviously. Isaac, ISAAC at vealliance.com. That is my main email address. You can find me on most of the social media platforms. Just search for Isaac Belden and you'll see this face on there, maybe a little bit more shaved. And then we also have the Veteran Entrepreneur Alliance on most of the platforms. So the VEA logo, it's a little bit different than it is on here these days. I don't think I have one around, but the center of it looks like this, so you can't miss it.
That's awesome. Well, I have to say thank you for your service, and thank you so much for such an admirable endeavor is really what it is. And going into your 4th year with all of these challenges, and you're still moving forward. I think that's like such a huge message for tonight, is that you can have major setbacks, but you got back up. You pivoted, you got back up, and you keep plugging along. So, I just have to award you. I admire that. That's just true grit. So one last question. What would be maybe a quote that you that you would use as a motivation for other entrepreneurs? Is there something that you say, or that you've seen that you follow, a motto?
So there's so many, but so I just had a really great conversation with a guy named Vincent Vargas. He goes by Rocco. He's a former Army Ranger, and he was talking about, and of course I'll butcher it if I try to tell you it exactly, but he talked a lot about how as veterans we sometimes hold ourselves back a little bit because we place too much value in our veteran status alone. And he talks about like, that's not who you are. That's something you've done. Who you are is all of the hard work and the determination that it took you to achieve that title or that position. Right. So don't focus on this one thing that people say you are, right? focus on the hard work and the determination that it took to achieve that, and put that effort forward into everything that you do, whether it be business or otherwise.
I love that.
So that's not a quote, more of a...
No, it isn't, but it's so much more. And
Yeah.
And I have to say, thank you so much for coming tonight and, giving your time to other business owners and, helping them. You're giving back again. And I'm glad that we were able to highlight your nonprofit and everything that you do. So hopefully we'll see you back.
Yeah, I'd love to. And thank you for you taking the time, and sorry that I jumped on 20 seconds before we went live.
All right. I think it all worked out pretty well.
Yeah,
like I said, this is a conversation. And that's what it's about, is just pure, authentic. You are you, I'm me, and we didn't need any prep tonight. I think everything's great. So for everybody out there, we are finished for tonight. I'm Maureen Edwards with 8 Simple Steps. And if you need to have somebody help you take the hard out of entrepreneurship and eliminate those mistakes, the complexity and the fear that goes into it, that can derail your success and sustainability, just reach out. I'm on every social media platform. So good night, everybody. And we'll see you next week.